So good, so good, so good.
Spring styles are at Nordstrom Rack stores now, and they're up to 60% off. Stock up and save on Rag & Bone, Madewell, Vince, All Saints, and more of your favorites.
How did I not know Rack has Adidas?
Why do we rack? For the hottest deals.
Just so many good brands.
Join the Nordy Club to unlock exclusive discounts, shop new arrivals first, and more. Plus, buy online and pick up at your favorite Rack store for free. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
Kayak gets my flight, hotel, and rental car right, so I can tune out travel advice that's just plain wrong.
Bro, Skycoin. Way better than points.
Never fly during a Scorpio full moon.
Just tell the manager you'll sue. Instant room upgrade.
Stop taking bad travel advice. Start comparing hundreds of sites with Kayak and get your trip right.
Bad advice? You talking to me?
Kayak. Got that right.
All right, ladies.
When you've done the work, you want your hydration to do the same. Introducing new Gatorade Lower Sugar, now with no artificial flavors, sweeteners, or colors. And 75% less sugar and all the electrolytes of regular Gatorade, now available nationwide.
Hey there, Mama Work It Tribe. I'm Marissa Lonick, working mom of 4, lover of all things flow, family, and fulfillment. You're tuning in to the Mama Work It podcast, where we take aim at overwhelm, mom guilt, and exhaustion and swap them out for big dreams, belly laughs, and productivity that actually fits into your life. Every week, we dive into tips, motivation, and a healthy dose of fun so you can slay your day even when you're busy AF. Ready to feel seen, energized, and totally unstoppable? Let's get to work, Mama. Hello, Mama friends. Welcome to another awesome episode of the Mama Work It podcast. So glad you're here. My name is Marissa Lonick. I am your host, working mom of 4, and founder of Mama Work It, where we support women in the juggle of mom life, work life, wife life, fill in the blank life. Excited to talk to our guest today. Her name is Julie Menanno. She is a therapist, author, and the creator of The Secure Relationship, a community dedicated to helping people build secure, loving relationships. With over 1.3 million Instagram followers, Julie's relatable advice and real-time couples therapy sessions have made her a trusted voice in relational health. Her book, Secure Love, published by Simon & Schuster in 2024, dives deep into attachment theory and is available worldwide. I'm so pumped for this topic. Julie, thank you so much for being here.
You're so welcome. It's awesome to be here. I mentioned to you before we started that I love the topic of parenting and I don't get to talk about it a lot. So
yes, great.
Good to be here.
Julie, I'd love to get started just learning a little bit more about your journey as a professional and a working mom, because we chatted before the episode started recording here. You have 6 kids. So you are definitely like an expert, I would say, in the working mom world. So give us a little bit of background on how this all came to be for you.
Sure. And a very imperfect expert, I will put out. So I had 6 kids in a relatively short period of time, in a 10-year period, averages at 2 years apart, but I do have a set of twins in there. So I was really struggling. I started out with, all the best intentions of doing things very differently from the way I was raised. And what I learned is that I was creating similar results, but through a different path. And I just kind of thought, okay, if I do a really good job of taking care of the logistics, then everything will work out. But I didn't realize this piece about emotional safety, emotional availability. And I didn't have it for myself. And I certainly wasn't able to give emotional health to my children. And so I was reading every book. I was trying really hard, but I was just drowning. And then by the time my sixth was born, I was really at the edge. And, I don't want to say it was an absolute disaster, because it wasn't. There were a lot of things I was doing really well, but I just wasn't feeling successful. And I'd been doing my own therapy journey at the time. And I really just had this strong pull to go back to grad school to get my master's in psychology, which I had majored in undergrad, but I switched because I didn't think I was going to be able to get a job with a bachelor's in psychology. And so I decided to go back, and everybody around me thought I was crazy. I mean, I don't know if there was one person who was like, oh my gosh, this is such a good idea. My youngest was 1 at the time, and it just really helped a lot. The driver of wanting to go back was really to learn this stuff from the ground up, instead of reading books written by people who were interpreting the information, but just to learn it for myself, to improve myself, and really kind of figure out how do humans work. And instantly I found attachment theory, and I just really dove into it. I mean, I was really, for that 2-year period, just kind of like doing the work that I was assigned on the side and learning attachment theory and spending most of my time doing that. And it really profoundly impacted my parenting. I mean, it took a few years for it all to really click. But, from there, I really did not want to work with couples at all once I got my degree and I started working on my license. But when you're working on a license, you have to see a certain number of couples. And so I saw when I say I didn't want to work with couples, I mean, I adamantly didn't want to work with couples. But I did see my first couple, and I thought, well, this could be really interesting. This is a challenge. And so I went to a training, and after that training, I never took on another individual as a client from that point forward. I just specialized in couples, fell in love with it for multiple different reasons. I feel like it's a very complete way to work, is helping the couple. A lot of what was going on with individuals is I was really developing this very safe relationship between the two of us, and then they would go home and not have that level of safety. And so for me to be able to bring that into a relational context and help them help their whole family, because once parents get emotionally safe, it just trickles down from there to the children. And anyway, so that's where I got going.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I'm curious why you were so adamant about not wanting to support couples. Yeah.
I had this kind of romantic idea about psychology, and I was really into this like psychoanalytic stuff, which is very Freudian, and that is the movement that led to attachment theory. After, maybe let's say 30 years, it kind of went in that direction. And so I had this kind of romantic idea about the subconscious and working on this really, really deep level, which a lot of the stuff being taught when I was in grad school wasn't that deep stuff. It was more like cognitive behavioral, which is fine, but it just wasn't for me. And so for me, this deeper dive into the human psyche was what felt really right and fulfilling. And in my perspective at the time was you can't do that with couples. What you're doing with couples is you're just facilitating communication and kind of acting like a ref at, in the very least, a ref at best, a coach. And that just didn't appeal to me at all. And so I was in California at the time, and I had to get an MFT, which is licensed marriage and family therapist. That's just the license that is most readily available based on the university programs. A lot of them are geared toward that license, and most master's level therapists in California have that license. And so I was really resentful. I mean, you can work with individuals with that license. Most people do. But I was really resentful that I had to call myself an MFT. And then once I started, working with couples, I was like, oh no, you can actually go to the deepest levels in this kind of work. Because you're not just doing it individually, you're doing it relationally. And you can get more authenticity. You get to really see the person in the context of, their problems. And, you're not just getting their limited view of the system. And then started realizing that this is impacting the system in their life, their relationship with each other and their kids. And so it felt like, more bang for my buck as far as helping people.
Yeah. A more holistic approach for sure. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I do, just to put this out there, I do think there's a lot of space and usefulness with individual therapy.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So can you give us for someone listening who's maybe never heard of attachment theory or has a very vague idea of what it is, can you explain what that means in kind of everyday terms?
Sure. So when we have a relationship between two people and it is most alive when it's two very close people, and attachment is most alive between romantic partners and parent-child, right? And so in those two relationships, we have what are called attachment needs. And those are the needs that need to be met for these two people to feel safe and close to each other. And because we are, relational beings by nature, we are meant to thrive when we feel safe and close in our most important relationships. It helps our nervous system actually settle. It's very nervous system based. And so some of these attachment needs are to feel safe and close. I need to feel understood. I need to feel heard. I need to feel seen. I need to feel validated. I need to feel like I'm valuable to you. I need to feel appreciated. I need to feel like you're going to really be there and show up for me when I really need you. Maybe I'm missing a couple, but those are the basics. Oh, I need to know that I am a good partner in your eyes, right? Or I'm a good kid in your eyes. And so when those attachment needs go unmet, and sometimes it's just in the global climate of the relationship, you're kind of always walking around feeling misunderstood, or you anticipate that if you reach to this person, you're not going to feel understood. Or it can just happen in a moment where most of the time you feel understood, but every now and then there's a rupture where you just don't. And so it doesn't really matter if it's global or if it's in a moment, it still hurts, right? It still hurts. And what happens is when an attachment need is unmet, it leads to emotional pain. And that emotional pain is going to be on the highest level. It could be anger or just a lot of anxiety. And then under that, we're going to have fear. And then under that, we're going to have sadness and grief and maybe shame get tapped into. So all of this is happening very quickly in this one moment where an attachment need goes unmet. And then our bodies learn to have a response to that. And those are people who grow up in secure environments where they learn how to deal with their emotions in a healthy way, they will respond to this pain in a way that is most likely to help make a repair, talk about their feelings, seek support, seek clarification. And the other person, if they're in a secure relationship, will know how to respond to that positively. But people who did not grow up in homes where there was that level of emotional safety, they learn to respond to this pain by either moving in and trying to change the person or trying to close the distance in some way with this really kind of heated, anxious response. Sometimes it looks like protest. Sometimes it looks like just rage. And that usually doesn't go well. And then other people, they learn to just kind of shut it all down, not care, go distract themselves, go find another way to feel successful in this moment. And so this is attachment theory. So basically, attachment theory is the nature of the fears in your relationship and then how you go about managing those fears. And attachment theory explains that. And then from attachment theory, we have these attachment styles, and those are how we categorize people. based on their typical responses. So the person who kind of gets anxious and tries to resolve it right then and there and tries to close the distance in this desperate way that often misses their own self-regulation, that is an anxious attachment. The person who just kind of shuts it all down, avoid the problem, get out of there, that is an avoidant attachment. And then someone who kind of does both and probably has some trauma responses in there too is disorganized. And then the person that can kind of step back and go, okay, hold on, what's happening for me? Okay, my body is kind of triggered right now. This is one of those moments where I'm getting scared. How can I regulate myself and go into this and express my emotions with either vulnerability or healthy assertion or a mixture of both?
This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking, maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
Kraft Mac and Cheese is better than 90s hip-hop. We'll remind you of your childhood without making you feel incredibly old. Kraft Mac and Cheese. Best thing ever.
To make it most likely that this other person is going to hear me and be present and not get triggered themselves. And of course, the other person will have needed to do their own work so they can show up to their partner's perfectly phrased bid for connection. So I'm always working on the delivery and I'm always working on the reception.
Right. Yeah. As you're kind of exemplifying a lot of these, I'm like, convicted. I want to understand though, and I want to give other people hope. I hope that even if you were raised in a home where you didn't have healthy attachment style, healthy attachment going on, this is a learned skill, is it not?
100% learned. It is. I mean, you either learn it as a child, right, or you learn it as an adult. Either way, it's learned. I mean, as a child, you have the advantage because your brain is forming. Sure. You're more saturated with those healthy relationships. But absolutely, you can learn this as an adult. And I know that because I've done it and I've helped, hundreds, if not thousands of people do it.
Yeah.
So it's not conceptual, and it is not, it also isn't cognitive work. There's a big emotional piece to it. Learning how to do emotions and processing emotions and sitting and learning how to work with your nervous system. So the cognitive work without the emotional work it won't stick ultimately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You talk a lot about negative relationship cycles. Mm-hmm. So can you give us an example of a negative cycle, and why do couples, and I'm going to really kind of focus on couples that are, listening to our show in this phase of life, like juggling work, kids, life stress. Why do we get stuck in them, especially?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, any couple's vulnerable to it, but couples who are dealing with a lot of external stress are more vulnerable to it because that external stress is kind of draining their resources. So, what you're describing is people who are in the thick of life, right? Mm-hmm. And moms and dads especially are dealing with competing attachments. So not only are you trying to manage the attachment with your partner, but you're also trying to keep your children's attachment safe. And a lot of times parents aren't on the same page with that. And that can now create more conflict because most parents aren't going to say, well, I'm not going to care about my kid's emotional health. Most people are going to fight for that. More than they're going to fight for, an argument over the keys or whatever. So that creates an environment that's even more vulnerable. And so what happens is there are unmet attachment needs in that relationship because of the way they're communicating. It's 100%, well, I don't want to say 100% related, rooted in communication, because there are ways that partners can behave that create wounds between each other. But ultimately, the healing and change around those behaviors has to come from healthy communication. So what happens is someone, these happen in moments, right? So they're arguing about the kids. Okay. And the one partner says, I don't think you're raising them right, or you're just doing what your mom did. And the partner now feels really unseen, really misunderstood, really invalidated. That hurts. First of all, it hurts to feel that way from anyone in life, but it especially hurts when it's your partner that you're relying on for emotional support and for living a life together and raising children together. And so someone with an anxious attachment, they're going to just probably spike up into anger. Like, oh my God, how dare you say that to me? Look at you, you're the one. So they're dealing with their fear of not being heard and understood, and the lack and the unsafety that comes from that with protest. I've got to somehow bring attention to this problem and convince you that you're wrong. And if I can just convince you that you're wrong, you'll change, you'll see it differently, and, we'll be okay. But what happens is if, typically there's an avoidant partner in the relationship on the other side of that, because that's the most common type of relationship. And so that avoidant partner either just withdraws or gets defensive, or they come back in with heat, and they now getting stuck in this blame going back and forth. But when they go there, now they're not addressing the first partner's painful emotions, because the first partner wasn't really talking about it to begin with. And so the first partner now feels emotionally abandoned. And when they feel emotionally abandoned, they get hotter. And when they get hotter, the other partner at some point will probably just turn the heat down by trying to just get out of there in the conversation, say something appeasing. And that is the cycle. It's like a protest, withdraw. The simplest version of it is. And what happens at the end of this is that, one, the problem doesn't get resolved, whatever the topic was. And two, it damages their emotional relationship even more than maybe it already had been. And so these hurts build up, right? And this is an unhealed rupture, because one partner is going to walk away feeling misunderstood, or probably both. The other partner is going to walk away feeling, attacked, or like their needs don't matter too, and also unheard. And so they both walk away feeling misunderstood, unheard, and alone. And so the learned alternative to that is to use, in these moments where we have these hurts, is to use vulnerability and healthy assertion communication to get out of that. And that kind of communication starts to build emotional safety. It's not in and of itself just the words. It's building the emotional safety in the nervous system. And when nervous systems are safe with each other, because couples are learning how to get there, the surface problems tend to start resolving on their own. And if they don't, at least the couple is much better equipped to work together over time to find some resolution.
Yeah. And it makes sense that if this were something occurring in a partnership, if both parties were coming to see you, there'd be a quicker path to resolution. But let's say that's not the case. Let's just say a mom's listening to this right now and like recognizing a negative cycle in her life, right? How can she personally work on building more secure attachment, even if her partner isn't fully on board yet?
Yeah. So what we can do is we can increase the odds, right? We can't make a partner change. We can't make a partner start accessing information to heal on their own, but we can set up the environment for as much success as possible and start to try to shift the safety. And so whatever that partner is feeling unsafe around, right? And they might not even know how to put words to it. That's where we have the opportunity to start shifting the way that we're showing up and communicating. Maybe they feel unheard. Maybe they feel like misunderstood or like not appreciated, right? So we kind of have to try to figure out like what's going on, what attachment needs might be lacking here, and how can I fill in the void? How can I start to maybe express things in a way where I self-regulate first, and I go in and validate their experience before I go into my own. That's one powerful tool. I know that, these books and all this relationship work doesn't really land well with you because you've seen it make things worse or, whatever it is. It obviously doesn't land well with you. And I totally understand that. I get where you're coming from. Some things don't land well with me either. At the same time, I'm not feeling safe and close all the time. And so I'm needing for us to make a shift here so we can work ourselves out of this. And if I don't get that, then I'm just going to feel alone with it. And usually people are more open to that approach than you never want to do work on the relationship. You always do this. You're not as invested as I am. And so it's just little things like that we start to shift. And it does require the ability to self-regulate our own nervous systems and do emotional work on our own before we can kind of start showing up in that way. And then the idea is as you build safety, the whole system starts to shift. That partner starts to, first of all, when you're not, for lack of a better word, behaving badly, the other person does have to start taking accountability. They really do have to start going, okay, what's my part here? Because they're really shifting. But even if that doesn't happen, emotional unsafety is draining. It requires a lot of energy. So when we start being emotionally safe, it does open up some energy for people to start self-reflecting. And then of course that doesn't always happen, right? And in a perfect world, one person let me just put this out there. I don't want one person indefinitely doing all this work. That's not fair. That doesn't work. But I at least want people to try, not only for the relationship, but for their own self. I just want to be a healthy person. I want to show up in a healthy way. I want to model to my kids how to approach problems. But then if that person isn't shifting and they're just rigidly staying stuck, that's when we'd have to consider the next level of help. And that's another topic of where do you go from there?
Yeah, because I can imagine if you're making that tremendous investment in taking those first few steps and you're not seeing any sort of result from it or even just minor shift, resentment's going to grow as well.
It will. And like I said, over the course of time, we do have to step back and reevaluate. I mean, it's codependency at some point if one person's just doing all the work. I don't know if codependency is always the way that I would label that, but what happens is people usually give up too soon because what they do is they try something new. It doesn't land. And so they say, see, this didn't work, but it takes time for trust to build. It takes time for environments to shift. So I always encourage people, look, just give it some consistency. It's just like with parenting and kids that when you start trying some new strategy, the healthiest strategy in the world probably isn't going to land that first time. And there's really no downside to being a safe person in a relationship. You don't have to give up your own boundaries and you don't have to give up your own needs in the sense of saying, I no longer have needs. It's different to say, I'm just going to not have needs. That's different from saying, I still have these needs and they're still going unmet. Again, you can't make the person meet those needs, but you can still put voice to the fact that your needs aren't being met.
This episode is being sponsored by AquaTrue. Did you know 3 out of 4 U.S. homes have toxic chemicals in their tap water? Even though contaminated water looks clear, it could put you at risk for devastating health concerns, including fatigue, hormone disruption, cognitive decline, even cancer. Surprisingly, standard fridge and pitcher filters do little to remove most contaminants, and bottled water contains microplastics. So what's the solution? Introducing AquaTrue, the countertop water purifier tested and certified to remove 84 contaminants, including chlorine, lead, forever chemicals, and microplastics. Its patented 4-stage reverse osmosis system goes way beyond ordinary filters for pure, healthy water you can trust. No plumbing, no installation. And if I'm being totally honest, the water tastes better, purer, cleaner, no aftertaste. Side bonus, it's making me drink more of it. Double win if you ask me, because I feel like hydration is something I struggle with on the regular. AquaTrue has been featured in Business Insider, Popular Science, and named Best Countertop Water Filter by Good Housekeeping. Join 98% of customers who say their drinking water is cleaner, safer, and healthier. Head to aquatrue.com now and get 20% off your purifier using promo code MAMA. AquaTrue even comes with a 30-day best tasting water guarantee or your money back. Take the guesswork out of pure, great tasting water with this exclusive podcast-only offer now at aquatrue.com. AQUATRU.com using promo code MAMA. MAMA. What would you say is like a timeline you recommend to people to give that real consistent effort?
I think weeks or months, depending on the situation. Some relationships are much more toxic than others, and it's just harder to survive in that environment. But, it's an opportunity when you're putting in this effort to do your own self-work, because every single time you reach and you don't get responded to in the way that you like, there's grief in there. There's feelings, and that grief is probably attaching to old grief where you have experienced emotional abandonments growing up. And it gives you the opportunity to access some of these feelings that might not be being processed, that are coming out as anger and protest. And so, I think weeks and, like I said, months, and then kind of step back and say, look, this isn't working. It's time for a conversation about a higher level of help. And it's difficult. Some partners are very, very rigid and very rigidly opposed to that. And so, at that point, we have to start going, okay, the other option is to either leave the relationship, in which case you would need to detach emotionally, because we don't want to stay emotionally attached and keep having these expectations that someone's going to be able to show up for us if they're not. And some people, they don't want to go through a divorce. They just don't want to do that financially or for their kids or whatever. And in that case, that person has to detach from expectations and stay in the relationship in a harmonious, light and polite kind of way, without having an expectation this person is going to be able to meet these deeper needs. And how can I in life get this emotional support and these needs met in other places? As a human, I need that. And that's a really hard thing to do. It's never easy. There's not easy answers when you're in a relationship with someone who can't show up for you. But what you can do is you can show up for yourself. And there's enormous value in learning to do that, even when we don't have a partner who can help us with that.
Yeah. All right. I want to end with this question. What does a secure relationship look like, feel like during conflict, not just in good moments? Because I think we all know what the good moments are, right? We've all had them, even if it feels like they're fewer and far between in the stage that we're in. But what does it look like during conflict?
Yeah. And I mean, most of this stuff is kind of defined by conflict, right? Because again, we're not going to not be our best selves when we're not triggered. So it looks like discomfort, first of all, because conflict, when we're not seeing eye to eye, and we also might be carrying fear around the actual issue. Again, with parenting, it's often coming from like, I'm scared of messing my kids up, and you don't see it the same way, right? And so there's a lot at, usually in conflict, there's a lot at stake, or nobody's fighting for that need. So it looks like discomfort, but it's regulated discomfort. It's not explosive, and it's not, I'm just going to shut down and not talk about it. And one person's trying to get all the resolution and the other person's just trying to shut it down. It looks like there's some emotional engagement. We're speaking about vulnerability, and we're also talking about logistical stuff. Some couples, it's all emotional explosion and no productivity. Some couples, it's all logistical, trying to convince each other of their opinion and their facts, and no emotional vulnerability. And it it's a sense of, okay, I'm uncomfortable and this is really hard, but there is some hope that we're going to be able to get through this, right? And we're going to really, we're able to hold the discomfort and hold the ability to hear each other at the same time. And we're able to express ourselves with, like I said, healthy assertion and vulnerability. So it instead of saying, well, you just don't want to, you're just being like your dad, you don't care about the kids' emotions, or you don't, whatever your belief in parenting is wrong, right? That's different from, listen, I get scared. Okay. I grew up in a home where my emotional needs really weren't met. And that was really painful for me. So when I want to do this kind of gentle parenting approach, what feels important to that about me is I want my kids to feel safe in a way I never felt safe. It's just like, I want you to feel safe. And I do believe that there's some value in taking that approach. And I don't think that means that we have to get rid of boundaries and accountability. But that's really where my heart is my heart is in helping our kids flourish and feel good in the world. That's very different. And it allows the partner to kind of step in with empathy instead of, you're just trying to prove me wrong. And then, of course, we would want that other partner to be able to share what they would like to see happen, but from a place of using feelings in there, like bringing in the humanity to that. And that's what it looks like. And what I have found over and over again is when couples can bring that vulnerability in, they do start to meet each other. Because it's amazing what emotional safety, it really makes people flexible. And then, if it is a parenting issue, they've just modeled to each other how to talk to their kids, talk their kids through an issue. So again, to summarize that, it looks like discomfort with emotional safety, and the ability to regulate nervous systems so that we can co-regulate together. And we co-regulate by at least hearing and validating and being open and not interrupting each other. And have sometimes some couples, when they're new to this, they need structure around these conversations. And so they need to take turns where one partner has the floor and they get to kind of say everything they need to say. The other partner's role is to just be there, listen, show understanding, show validations of the feelings. And then they switch and they don't try to come to some decision until after they've gone through that process of really leaning into each other.
Yeah, makes total sense. And I bet too, when you're having conversations with this framework in mind, you probably realize at some point more often than you thought, maybe if you were having conflict without this secure attachment, that your goals are pretty similar where you want to get to, right?
Yes. It's so true. Yeah. Because if you had the other partner share, they're just going to share about the same fear. I have a fear that they're not going to do well in life because they're not going to have limits. And, we're both scared, right?
Yeah.
And we have different ideas about how to manage that fear, but let's try to meet each other. Because the best thing for the kids is parents who are, feel emotionally safe and close with each other.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
The vibe in our house is way better when my husband and I are on the same page, when we're really getting along and, just in a really good place. And it just, like you said, it trickles down.
It really does.
Yeah.
It really does. Yeah. There's so much value. I think that before, someone takes their kid to therapy, they should try couples therapy, either in tandem or first, because I don't see how, so much of children's anxiety is related to not feeling safe at home because they know in their bodies when their parents aren't in a good place with each other.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's such good advice. All right, Julie, before we wrap up our episode, we're going to head to our lightning round. I'm just going to ask you some fun, random questions so our listeners can get to know you a little bit more personally. You ready? Okay. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Gosh, probably, this is so silly, but I think it would be really cool to fly.
Honestly, it's like the number one answer on this show. So,
is it?
Yeah.
I thought we were going to go with, I don't know, something more high, more.
No, it's like a lot of people say that. So yeah,
I would
I get
love
it.
to fly. Yeah.
Yeah. What's your guilty pleasure TV show?
Oh, 100% crime documentaries for sure. Yeah.
Oh, I like those too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like all
Definitely.
documentaries. I'm kind of nerdy.
I do
like that.
too. Yeah. I like psychological thrillers, but it's hard to, like, I've seen them all, you know.
Yeah.
Good ones don't come out a lot. So I always default to the crime documentaries. I've heard that women love them because it gives them a sense of control. Like, this isn't happening to me. This is happening to someone else. And it kind of helps us process our own fears around, you know, horrible things, which is kind of sick and demented, but it works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. If you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be? Calories don't count.
I mean, I would probably go to, well, this isn't going to be a very popular answer, but I guess beef, because it has the cows eat the grass and get a lot of nutrients. So I
That is a
wouldn't
very
like
practical answer.
Yes, it is. I wouldn't like it. If I had to choose what I really would want to eat and it wouldn't cause any bad health, it would be ice cream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any flavor in particular?
Salted caramel.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question. What is something most people may not know about you?
I'm a foosball champion in my home. Yeah.
Okay.
I got a foosball table for Christmas. So I keep having competitions in the family, and I'm actually offering reward money to bribe them into participating in these competitions. I am obsessed with skiing. Obsessed, you know, love it so much. And I'm really funny. I mean, like, I keep my kids in stitches all day long. I don't know if you've ever seen that show, Good Luck Charlie.
No, I haven't.
It's an older sitcom for kids, and the mom is Amy Duncan. And we're like identical, like seriously identical. My kids call me Amy. So
wow.
Yeah, it's funny. And
That's
there's
funny.
a storyline where she tells her kids that she was a cheerleader and in high school, and they find out that she was actually Robbie the Ram, the mascot. But she was on the cheerleading team, and like that identical thing happened with my kids as I would tell them I was on the cheerleading team, but I was actually the Ram mascot. So
you were?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Identical story. It was so funny. I was like, I wonder, because I lived in LA. I was like, I wonder if somebody in some weird link of events heard that story from me. And it got to
and pitched it on the show.
Exactly.
And wrote it.
Yeah. So I don't think people would recognize it. I'm actually super, super goofy at home.
Well, good. Well, let our listeners know where they can connect with you, find you, pick up your book.
Sure. So my book is Secure Love. It's available wherever books are sold. And At the Secure Relationship is my Instagram. And then my podcast is the Secure Love Podcast with Julie Menanno. So, and that's where I take a couple and walk them through 20-ish sessions, one couple, same couple, of the type of therapy I do, which is emotionally focused therapy. And we work with attachment. The foundation is attachment theory. So if you really want to see this work come alive, that's the place to find it.
What a great way to get like a sneak peek of it before trying it yourself. That's cool.
Exactly. And sometimes I think people have reported that it's actually, helped them heal their relationship by, knowing better what to do with the work I'm doing with the couples. So getting that template and modeling.
Great. Well, Julie, thank you so much for being here and teaching us all about attachment theory and all this good stuff.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Keep up the good work.
That's a wrap for this episode of the Mama Work It podcast. I hope you feel empowered, inspired, and ready to take your next step. If this episode spoke to you, share it with another amazing mama, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It helps us show up wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to head over to mamaworkit.com for free resources, coaching support, and new ways to momage your days as a busy mom. Until next time, keep on working it, mama.